Welcome back, students, to the last and the final chapter on our rules on commas. So we have already covered 3 comma rules. Now we are up to comma rule number 4. The comma rule number 4 is very simple, that we don't use a comma between an adjective and a noun. This is sometimes tested on the SAT. So let's take a SAT example and see how it works. On one hand, I couldn't wait to view painter George Seurat's 10-foot wide a Sunday afternoon on the isle of La Grande Jatte in its full sire. So out here, we are looking at this pair of painter and George Seurat. This, as you can understand, is the adjective. And this, as you can understand, is the noun. So this basically is an adjective-noun pairing. And hence, we need to remove this comma. So that goes without saying that we need to remove this comma. So that leaves us with option choice A being eliminated, option choice B being eliminated. So the only options that we have are option choice C and D. So we need to understand that whether we can have a comma after George Seurat's 10-foot wide. So this is the name of the, this is the direct name of the painting. So do we need to have a comma between the direct noun and the subject? So I am very sure that we need to remove this comma as well, as we are going to see in the next rules to follow, and hence the correct answer to this one should be a D. So this is what comma rule 4 is all about, that there shouldn't be a comma between an adjective and a noun, although this does not prohibit to use comma between 2 or more adjectives that we are using for the same noun. As for example, let's take this question. The sweet scintillating aroma of cinnamon buns filled the kitchen. So sweet and scintillating are 2 adjectives used for the same aroma, and hence we can have a comma to demarcate between the 2 adjectives. This is a bonus question, as I call it, on the SAT, because these questions are hardly ever, I've never seen this kind of a question asked on the SAT, but this is just to demonstrate a particular concept on the use of commas between, or any punctuation between adjectives and the noun. So let's read through the question. So the Austronesian language family includes Samoan, Palauan, and some 1,200 other languages throughout the Pacific, making it one of the largest families in the world and of keen interest to a dash of UC Santa Cruz. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the standard English conventions. Now, by common logic, as we have already covered in the previous section, the answer should be a straightforward D, which is no punctuation between linguist, which is the adjective rather, and the noun, which is this one, Sandra Chung. Right? By common sense or common knowledge, it should be the answer D. But unfortunately, out here, the answer is not a D, but the answer should be a C. Now, I'm just going to get you to the point, just in case you find that any arbitrary linguist, right? And you have got an linguist, right? Only then, this portion, which is the name, becomes a non-restrictive or non-essential clause. So the sentence could simply be, and of keen interest to a linguist of UC Santa Cruz. So the name actually is nothing but an appositive or a non-restrictive clause, and hence it has got to be surrounded by either 2 dashes or 2 commas, just in case you have got this A out here. Even if it were then it will not, the correct choice would have been a D. But because there is an right, only in this case it will be considered, the name will be considered to be a positive or a non-restrictive clause, and hence the answer to this one should be a C. Now we come to comma rule number 5. Comma rule number 5 is very important because this is multiple times this is tested on the SAT. When we say that the most common use of a comma is to demarcate a list A, comma, B, comma, and C, we need to be absolutely sure that these commas demarcate a similar list. It is very important for us to understand that this list has to be similar in nature. This cannot be an inclusive list or a wider list or a list of items that is not a part of the list itself. So as for example, let's take an example. There is an example worked out here. So let's do this first. So the article published by the Forbes magazine explained that co-working spaces are designated locations that for a fee individuals can use to conduct their work. The spaces are usually stocked with standard office equipment, photocopiers, printers, and fax machine. So we are looking at this portion wherein we are looking at office equipment, photocopiers, printers, and fax machine. So is this correct or incorrect? We are looking at that. So it is office equipment, and then we have got a comma, and then we have got photocopiers, and then a comma, printers, then a comma, and fax machine. So this apparently looks pretty okay because we are fulfilling the rule of more than two items there should be a comma before the and. But then what we fail to understand is that when we look at this sentence, it says that it is stocked with standard office equipment. Now actually photocopiers, printers, and fax machines are nothing but standard office equipment. So basically it's not a part of the same group. It is not as if, so it is basically standard office equipment, and then inside that it is item number 1, item number 2, and item number 3. So this basically would mean such as or something like that, right? Such as photocopiers, printers, and fax machines, and hence a comma to demarcate an item that is an all-encompassing item, and items which lie within this item, right, is incorrect. So this shouldn't be a comma. So that rules out A. Then there is a semicolon. We can understand that for there to be a semicolon, both parts have to be independent. So under any stretch of imagination, photocopiers, printers, and fax machines don't stand as an independent clause. So definitely it cannot be this one. Such as can be replaced by a colon. So C looks to be okay with me. Equipment such as. Now here we are using two punctuation, such as and comma. And we have seen this, or we are going to see this probably, that whenever we have got things like prepositions like as, we never use any kind of any punctuations with those. So D is incorrect. So the most logical and the correct answer to this one is C. So these are some rules for misuses. As we have already seen, don't use a punctuation typically before at, in, on, with, right? These are typical prepositional phrases. They start with at, for, in. These are all prepositions, right? We never use a comma when we have these prepositions. Never use punctuations between such as, just the example that we saw, like or including. Don't use any punctuation before that. So it is very important, no punctuations with prepositional phrases, words like such as, like, or including, and that. So these are some things that we need to remember. So there are some petty comma rules which we keep on using, but then still I've enumerated some, not specifically asked on the SAT, but then yeah, we need to understand this. Comma, with a few exceptions, comma do not separate the subject from its verb, obviously, right? So never in the case of SAT, not even with the few exceptions, never in the case of SAT, because they're all for poetic users that probably we use these exceptions. For the SAT, never a comma should separate. So in this one, we can see that this is correct, this is correct, this is correct, and darkness is. Now see, this is a verb, this is auxiliary verb, and this is the subject. So no comma out here, and the correct one is this one without the comma. Compound subjects like fish and chips, right? This is actually the name of a single thing, fish and chips. So obviously we cannot use a comma after fish. So compound subjects hardly ever used out here, right? Don't separate a transitive verb from its direct object, like Mary said what, right? She likes to have chocolate. I mean, it is that same example that we saw, some painters painting, some painters painting, right? Some painters painting. So we don't use a comma between these two. That's how it is. And between the paired, that is the correlative conjunctions like either or, neither nor, right? We don't typically use a comma anywhere between the two pairs. So either the blue shirt, comma, or. So either and or pair, the correlative conjunctions, we don't use a comma. So no commas out here, right? So these are some petty rules that we always follow, but then, yeah, sometimes very difficult, but then sometimes it is asked on the SAT. So we need to take care of these ones. This concludes our rules with commas. Stay tuned. The next section will be the semicolon rule number 1.